You wake up one morning, open your playlist and think, you know what, I'm going to be classy today. No Afro beats, no rap, no TikTok hits. I'm going full-on high culture. Bring me some Wagner. So you press play, and 10 minutes later you're wondering, why does it feel like I'm being chased by an angry orchestra down a German alleyway? Well, Friedrich Nietzsche had a similar problem, only worse, because Wagner wasn't just in his playlist. Wagner was in his soul, and Nietzsche wanted him out. Today, I'm diving into a book where one of the greatest philosophers of all time grabs one of the greatest composers of all time by the collar and says, "Sir, you are the problem." And oh boy, it gets spicy. So, it's the late 19th century. Nietzsche, the brilliant German philosopher, is having what I call a musical crisis. You see, Nietzsche used to love Wagner. They were friends. He was basically Wagner's hype man at first. If Instagram existed back then, Nietzsche would have been reposting Wagner's operas like "New track just dropped, fire, fire, fire." But something changed. Nietzsche had what he calls the greatest event of my life. His words, not mine. And that event was recovering from Wagner.
The greatest event of my life took the form of a recovery. Wagner belongs only to my diseases.
Yes, Wagner went from musical genius to disease. Nietzsche is basically saying, I was sick with Wagner, but now I'm cured. But why? Why this dramatic breakup? Well, Nietzsche thought Wagner's music wasn't just music anymore. It was, brace yourself, degeneracy disguised as art. According to Nietzsche, Wagner's compositions were so theatrical, so over the top, they stopped being music and became acting. He literally called Wagner an actor, not a musician.
It is glaringly obvious. Great success, mob success, is no longer the achievement of the genuine. In order to get it, a man must be an actor. Victor Hugo and Richard Wagner, they both prove one and the same thing, that in declining civilizations, wherever the mob is allowed to decide, genuineness becomes superfluous. The actor, alone, can still kindle great enthusiasm.
So basically, Wagner was the Kanye West of Nietzsche's time. Famous, dramatic, loved by the masses, but in Nietzsche's eyes, not the real deal. But hold on, Nietzsche admits something shocking. He says,
I am just as much a child of my age as Wagner, that is to say, I am decadent. The only difference is that I recognize the fact that I struggled against it. The philosopher in me struggled against it.
So Nietzsche is like, yeah, I'm part of the problem too, but at least I know it. That's what makes him different from Wagner. And here's where the tea gets hotter. Nietzsche wasn't just throwing shade at Wagner. He was actually terrified of what Wagner represented. He believed that Wagner's music symbolized a dangerous cultural trend, the rise of decadence as the norm. He saw society, just sliding down a long, slippery slope of mediocrity, and Wagner was the poster child for it.
Whom did this movement press to the front? What did it make ever more preeminent? First, the layman's arrogance. Secondly, an ever-increasing indifference towards severe, noble, and conscientious schooling in the service of art. Thirdly, and worst of all, theocracy. The craziness of a belief in the preeminence of the theater, in the right of the theater to rule supreme over the arts.
In short, Wagner wasn't just making music, he was turning music into a circus, and Nietzsche hated it. So what does Nietzsche do? He switches teams. He starts praising another composer, Bizet. And you know what's funny? Bizet, the guy behind Carmen, is not even as big a name as Wagner today. But Nietzsche was like, finally, someone who doesn't make me sweat like I'm running a marathon.
May I be allowed to say that Bizet's orchestration is the only one that I can endure? That other orchestration, which is all the rage at present, the Wagnerian, is brutal, artificial, and unsophisticated withal. I call it the sirocco. A disagreeable sweat breaks out all over me. All fine weather vanishes.
Yes, Nietzsche compared Wagner's music to a desert wind that makes him break out in a sweat. Savage. Now, what really ticked Nietzsche off was Wagner's obsession with theatrical drama. He believed Wagner abandoned all the rules of music just to create something that looked powerful on stage. Nietzsche says Wagner used music as a rhetorical device, a way to act, not to create pure art.
Was Wagner a musician at all? In any case, he was something else to a much greater degree. That is to say, an incomparable histrio, the greatest mime, the most astounding theatrical genius the Germans have ever had.
So basically, Wagner was a world-class actor with a side hustle in music. And then Nietzsche lists his 3 big rules for saving art. The stage should not become master of the arts. The actor should not become the corrupter of the genuine. And music should not become an art of lying. But Wagner broke all 3. According to Nietzsche, Wagner turned music into lies. Beautiful, seductive lies. By now, Nietzsche is done. He's packing his bags and leaving Camp Wagner forever. He even writes an essay called How I Got Rid of Wagner. Talk about a dramatic exit. And Nietzsche's conclusion? Music is doomed.
From the rule that corruption is paramount, that corruption is a fatality. Not even a god can save music.
Dark, very dark. And before we wrap up the story part, here's my favorite mic drop moment.
The musician is now becoming an actor. His art is developing ever more and more into a talent for telling lies.
Tell me that doesn't sound like today's music industry.
We brainwashed out here, bro.
The book I've been talking about is The Case of Wagner, Nietzsche Contra Wagner, and Selected Aphorisms by Friedrich Nietzsche. It's basically 2 fiery essays where Nietzsche breaks up with Wagner, philosopher style, and throws in some aphorisms for extra spice. Now let me be honest with you, I didn't pick up this book because I'm some high-culture genius who lives for opera and symphonies. I picked it up because I wanted to read something by Nietzsche. And let me tell you, this man is not easy reading. Half the time I was like, am I dumb or is Nietzsche just Nietzsche? Probably both. But here's what I got. Nietzsche's fight with Wagner is bigger than music. It's about culture. It's about the danger of confusing decadence for greatness. It's about what happens when the mob, popular opinion, decides what's good art. He saw it in his time. We see it today. Back then, he said the actor was replacing the genuine artist. Today, replace actor with influencer or viral star, and Nietzsche sounds prophetic. We reward fame over talent, controversy over creativity, nudity over nuance. Music videos today are more about skin than skill. Nietzsche warned against this over 100 years ago. And here we are. And here's the thing. Nietzsche didn't hate all of Wagner. He admired his theatrical genius. But he believed Wagner betrayed music by turning it into a tool for drama, not an art for its own sake. One line that really hit me.
Nowadays, all things that can be done well and even with a master hand are small.
Ouch, that's basically Nietzsche saying, we've lowered the bar so much that excellence has no place. And looking at some of today's charts, he might be right. Now, a quick word about the man behind the words, Friedrich Nietzsche. Born in 1844 in Rocken, Germany, Nietzsche was a philosopher, cultural critic, and philologist. He wrote some of the most influential works in Western philosophy, Beyond Good and Evil, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, The Birth of Tragedy, and of course, this one. Nietzsche's ideas were radical for his time. He challenged morality, religion, and culture. He introduced concepts like the will to power and the Übermensch. But he also struggled with illness and spent the last years of his life in mental decline. Despite that, his works remain hugely influential today, sometimes misinterpreted, but always provocative. So, should you read this book? If you love philosophy, culture, and a little intellectual drama, absolutely. If you just want to know whether Wagner or Bizet has the better playlist, maybe just stick to Spotify. But honestly, this book is a fascinating look at how one of history's greatest thinkers viewed art, music, and society. And it'll make you think twice the next time you hear an opera or even a TikTok hit. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.